Well, some stupid update on my phone keeps popping up every so often. I'm like, why don't you update your phone? And every time it does, it interrupts the video. I'm like, well, I guess you don't want to have any young filmmakers use your phones to create masterpieces or anything ever. Or middle-aged filmmakers. But I was looking at the Chronicles of Prydain, and I just wanted to say this is it's a fantasy series I forget about sometimes, or like, it's often spoken of as a lesser thing in comparison with Tolkien, because it's the other series that draws from Welsh mythology. But like there would only be one book that draws from Greek mythology. Give me a break. It's rich. Or Norse mythology, or Native American mythology, or anything. I mean, it's like there's millions of ways to look at these deep mythologies. Millions, Prisma. Aristotle's all 36 ways. But yeah, let's see if I can remember from the covers what these are about. I mean, there's this myth of this rumor of this guy, creepy, who owns the land, and this young guy hears of him. So for some reason, he's sent on a quest. There's this cauldron. He has a vision. This one, I think, has a lot to do with Eilonwy, the kind of female lead character in the series. In the castle. Toran Wanderer. Hiking, and that's just such a classic fantasy painting. That's great. When I was a kid in Austria, I read this like pulp fantasy novel for adults that was like, it was set in the distant past, but people had escaped Earth by using gunpowder powered rockets, and it was so cool. That's one of my lost media items. We've never been able to find that one again. I'm like, what was that? These survived the purge. They stayed in the kids' book collection, though none of these books have ever really resonated with any of my kids that I know of. I started reading them to them as a series, and I think we stalled out somewhere around 2 or 3. 4 books here of a matching set. One that I think is one of the coolest looking ones that's not from the set. This extra published later. Short stories in that world. I'm excited to write my sci-fi fantasy book in November that I've been getting ready this year to write, structuring it out, figuring out the characters and everything. World building is going to be a lot of fun. I mean, nonfiction, I always say, is the ultimate world. Nonfiction is the ultimate literary cinematic universe, but it's beautiful to like create something. And these were rich. I mean, when I was a kid and read these, I taught my younger sibling, then my younger brother, now my younger sister, how to I would taught then him all the characters, and we would play pretend in this world, running around in the woods and stuff as little kids. 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, 5th grade even. I think I played like a lot longer than maybe some kids. I wonder. Like, I remember my brother and I had a whole world with like our stuffed animals. I'm like, sheesh, what grade was that we were still doing that? I'm like, was I in 5th grade? I guess that's okay. Well, just the characters were so developed, you can't just throw those away, after years. I think I have a special spot for Prydain, and I find Prydain fans once in a while, people that still have these on their shelves, and I'm like, oh, you grew up with these and kept them around for your kids? Yep. My kids' aunt and uncle have it on their bookshelf out in the hallway. I'm like, yeah, it is a good series that, you know what, I remember it fondly, and there's something special about writing that younger readers can read. That's how you get loyal readers and fans and defenders for life. Not that I'm going back and reading these over and over or anything like that. I've never reread them, except for the time I tried to read them to my kids. But that might not be true. In the early 2000s, I reread a lot of classic stuff. I was in my early 20s, so I was still yeah. But I feel affection and fondness when I remember this series, and it's not out of the question that I would reread them someday. I think the only thing that would get me to read a bunch of kids' books again would be if I was writing something about it in particular. But I did reread The Pigman recently and thought it was good enough to put on the paperback project shelf by Paul Zindel, and it was. I was like, this is just literature. It made me move The Little Prince over too. Okay, here's a very different series, but I love this series. You know, Louis Sakar, you know, you're a force. Oh, this is from The Great Syrup Disaster too. When my son piled a bunch of books in a pile and poured a bottle of syrup on him when he was really little. That's a pretty interesting repair. I like it. Covered all the syrupy parts except right there. Yeah, there were these books with red covers that stuck to everything. Was that against me? I wonder. Well, which you'll know. Took me to that new Superman movie the other day. I was like, thanks, Hagen, that's so nice. You go to a movie? My kid, he's a lifeguard. He's cool. Got a tattoo, goes to the gym, goes to like the top school in the state on a full scholarship, and is like a smart math kid. Also like a talented artist whenever he puts his hand to it. These are special books, and I think there's another one now, and they are so funny, and there's not enough funny books in the world. I don't know that they would crack me up reading them just by myself as an adult or anything like that, but I remember reading these in 6th grade, and like I couldn't breathe. I thought they were so hilarious. And they're so surreal. There's one where there's this horrible kid that everyone hates, and then they find out he's just a pile of dead rats in a raincoat that's alive somehow. People are turning into apples, and like all sorts of crazy things happen. It's this school that is built on its side. That this is from the author of Holes, which is such like a profound and beautiful book, I think. And it's kind of serious, you know. It's not so cartoony, though it has its elements. Like he likes to play with the details of the world. I get it. But these are funny. These stories have worn grooves in my mind. Each one has a story for every classroom. So for every story of this weird building. These are delightful. I think they've been adapted into a show. But I don't have any memory of seeing it. I really felt like, you know what? They brought surrealism and some really like a really unique way of thinking to children's literature, you know? And I appreciate that. There's, of course, a long precedent for that, going back to Lewis Carroll and beyond, you know? But they just accept kids to just accept the strangest stuff. There's a classroom that disappears or that doesn't exist. Wayside School gets a little stranger. Wayside School is falling down. Sideways Stories. Yeah, this, to me, and then to my kids, at least my older kids anyway, this was Anodyne and Hagen. I think this was a very special trilogy of reliably hilarious books. To Sonora, too, because I read all these. These were bedtime classics. I read them to them over and over. Anytime they'd remember their existence, they'd be like, let's read those. And they're very funny to read aloud and read with kids. You know, that's cool. And you know, you kind of get like a compliment when you read something funny that somebody else wrote. You're like, yes, I'm reading this. A series of books that was really a thing for our family for a while. Me and my children. I read all these to them at bedtime, kind of one by one as they came out. And they loved the original trilogy. They loved the prequel. I thought it was kind of diminishing returns with each book personally, but it's still a great world and great characters. And if your characters are good enough, you want to just keep hanging out with them. I totally get that. I enjoyed that Disney Plus series, The Mysterious Benedict Society. I don't think I watched it all, but I was sad to hear that it was canceled. No, I did. No, we did. We watched that whole season. This one's really good. Kind of a new modern classic, The Mysterious Benedict Society, about these super smart kids that have to overthrow a great evil. It's really imaginative and fun, and the characters are great. They really, that video that I recorded with my daughter, Anodyne, she went off on these books. I was like, oh, wow, you really remember these fondly. And I know there are more now. And that's cool. I always thought this prequel deserved 2 more to be a full trilogy. It was a good prequel. Yeah, there's a character that's really resourceful and was in the circus and carries a bucket with her everywhere. Kate the Great Weather Machine. These two are, yeah, I enjoy these. I was reading one of these to my kids in a park one time. They were like addicted to them. They were like, you gotta read us more. I had some great years of reading with my kiddos. I was reading one of these with them in a park, and this kid comes crawling up to me like a teenager with a handgun, and I'm like, oh crap, we're like about to get shot by some idiot. And I jumped on this guy and twisted his arm behind his back and took the gun. He was like a 14-year-old that had this pellet gun that looked exactly like a real gun. He had painted over the orange tip even. And like, his mom came up to me afterward and she was like, he just likes to have his fun in the park. I'm like, lady, your kid is gonna get shot by the police. That looks like a real freaking gun. Like, anyway, this has been Mike's Mysterious Benedict Society memory. I was reading this one. Not entirely sure of the park, but I remember the book. I want to say Los Altos back in the day. I'm not sure. Pippi Longstocking. I feel like I grew up with Pippi Longstocking. Like, she was just someone I always knew. Loved these books growing up. And whatever version of her stories you could find, because they're all in translation from Swedish. And so, when I was in 2nd grade, I went to this American international school in Austria where my parents lived for weird religious reasons. And one of my good friends was this 3rd grader that I knew from the bus rides mostly, named Christina. And I looked her up one time, and she's like a super smart, like Ivy League person now, like almost like famous with academic publications and stuff. But at the time, she was this kid that was older than me and like just swore all the time. And she was like Pippi Longstocking, and she was Pippi Longstocking for Halloween the year I knew her, and I always thought of her that way, and I was reading the books at the same time. Just like a magical, fun presence, and I couldn't believe her because she would just swear like an adult, and all I knew were Mormons. Yeah, they were popular shows too. The TV shows sometimes add magic. She basically is magic, but in the books she's just super, super strong, like freakishly strong, and can lift a horse up and carry around. And her dad's a pirate, and I don't know. It's pretty crazy. They're old-fashioned in some ways. There's one chapter where they just get a bunch of stuff from a drugstore and put it in a bottle and then talk about drinking it, and then Pippi throws it away. Never mind. There's no big safety warning or anything. This one, these are the 3 main chapter books of Pippi Longstocking by Astrid Lindgren that are available in English. And I have a picture book of hers too, I think, about the Tomten. That's my water. Leave my water alone. Okay, it's yours now. Just don't knock it over. Has no respect for my drinking water. Just stick her head in it anytime I set it down. There are other Pippi Longstocking stories that are published just like individually and on their own, but I think there's a lot, at least, I don't know, at the time that I was buying them, that were not translated into English. I have a great memory of reading this one to my kids, and they just couldn't stop laughing. It was like the hardest I'd ever heard any of them laugh. And they were all little in their rooms, just lying there in the dark, and I was sitting in a chair in the hallway reading to them. And there's this scene where these pirates are trying to climb up onto this ledge in a cave, and Pippi just keeps pushing them off when they get back up there. It is funny. It's like a classic like physical comedy scene. And it's just delightful. Their laughter rings in my ears still. I am glad my kids grow up and everything, but it's hard not to, be a little bit wistful perhaps sometimes for just like the little cute, receptive beings that they were, Hey kids, I think you'll like this book. And they would, Pippi Longstocking is a classic character. Villa Villacula and all the characters, everything, it's classic. It's great. And, it's a character that breaks the gender barrier too. You know, they say that, oh, now you're drinking my water too, Prisma. What? Sticking your paw in even. Okay, thanks. That's great. This is what complete disrespect looks like. You clean yourself with your tongue. That's why I don't want to share things with you. You're very thorough for the dreadlock spot on your back, which I think you have a hard time reaching. Anyway, this is a classic literary character, you know? People are all, Anna Karenina. Yeah, that is true. But, you know, I think there's real value in characters created for younger readers, too. Magic and joy, and they stay with you, you know? BP agrees. Think of all the people who still feel fondly about Moomins, or... Oh. Classic old editions, too. These are the kinds of books I grew up with, these old Scholastic books. I used to love the Scholastic Book Fair. And my brother's published by them. That's cool. I went to a Scholastic Book Fair recently, and it was like all toy books and things that light up and you can take apart. And I was like, where are the actual books? Yeah, I believe the expression is, I ain't got a dog in this fight. Why do I have these books on my shelf? These are just a book that one of my kids really loved. Maybe two of them. And maybe because I can still kind of remember spending money on these brand new, I'm like, I can't just throw them away or get rid of them. No, and the kids liked them, and maybe some kids will want these sometime. Or Sonora will get nostalgic sometimes. She's the one that read them all when she was little. Save them for, you know, one of my kids or something someday. When you're a young reader, you do need books at every level, you know, like that help you, that meet you where you're at. And this is a good kind of book for, you know, young readers in the elementary grades. And, yeah. Tappy Towers. And, you know, they probably teach something good. Love animals. Think about them. Here's some facts about them also. Any hardcore Tappy Towers fans out there? Probably not. I think these are more recent. I did not grow up with these, but Sonora and Willow, my now 15 and 12-year-old, did. I think Willow might have read one too once. Maybe all of them. I don't know. Animal stuff's a big hit in my households. Here's a series I literally have not been able to collect all of. I would have when I was reading these to my kids, because they loved both of these books. They loved them. These were hits. I did not know these books that I know of when I was a kid. Maybe I saw this one around. But these are rare. It's like a rare out-of-print series, except I think this is from a reprint. Like, people have tried to bring them back at times. Stowaway to the Mushroom Planet by Eleanor Cameron, and The Wonderful Flight to the Mushroom Planet by Eleanor Cameron. It's a really cool... Oh, so this is the first one. Book one. Okay, it's The Wonderful Flight. So this one stays in print a little bit. This is obviously a more recent version. But in these books, Earth has a second moon. And a little guy that lives on one of the moon really needs some children to bring chickens to the moon. Because the yolks have something that they need or something like that. But these kids have to do it themselves. Like, their belief in purity of heart is part of like what allows the magic of the ship they build to work. And it's kind of old-fashioned in its thinking, fairy tale-like almost, but it doesn't feel too cheesy, and it has, if you can accept its mix of it's like a magical sort of sci-fi, whimsical even. It's a lot of fun, and it's cool, and they're well written, and I remember really liking them and wanting to get them all. But like, some of the books in the series are literally hundreds of dollars. Like, they're a completely out of print series for the most part, except for this first one. But I think a lot of times publishers and history would have you think that series only had one book, you know? They're like, that one can live on. But don't miss Stowaway to the Mushroom Planet. And yeah, there's more. But I loved that idea of Earth having a second moon. I thought that was really cool. So these were particularly popular with my oldest daughter, Anodyne. And they're well written and interesting. Gail Carson Levine, they're funny. She wrote the book that Ella Enchanted was based on, and has a real knack for taking classic fairy tales and turning them into really extra-dimensional, interesting, modern, stories that are fun, and kind of explaining some of the things in the meanwhile that don't make sense in the fairy tales. Like, why does Cinderella just let her siblings push her around? Well, she's got a curse that, means she has to obey anything anyone says. These all have similar fun in shorter form with other fairy tale ideas and fairy tales. And Anna loved these books. She loved all Gail Carson Levine. She read so much. She read The Princesses of Bomari so many times. And and I read these out loud to my kids at bedtime sometimes. They're called Princess Tales. And but I don't know. I did not feel emasculated in any way, right wing, reading these to my kids. There's some really, I think it's very interesting that girls have no problem reading books with boys as the main characters, but boys often have problems with reading books with girls as the main characters. Like, I think it shows more advanced emotional intelligence, honestly, that girls can empathize with people that are different than themselves more easily, and boys are like, what? I don't think my son's ever had problems with books like this. We've always included stuff like this in our readings. I read to my kids a lot when they were little and growing up, the first three, and then my fourth just wasn't that interested in it after a while. I don't know. She would just rather fall asleep in the dark with her dog. Now she's 12 anyway, but she just finished reading the Hunger Games trilogy for the first time, and so she's gonna read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which I got her a copy of, and I'm gonna read it too. And I think that'll be a cool experience. I also don't want her to get discouraged by it because she had so much fun with the trilogy, but I could see the prequel being a little more of a slog. And I want her to encourage her in her reading because my third and fourth kids just haven't read as much as my older kids. And my son doesn't read that much now either. But no, I got him reading again. He just read The Alchemist. He's going to read A Heartbreaking Work of Staggering Genius and Into the Wild. I'm like, that's amazing. I wanted books with the potential to make him think differently about life. Yeah, I'm going to read this with Willow. I never wanted to sympathize with Snow. He's horrible in the trilogy. But I'm so glad she read that, and I'm like proud of her. That's great. It's a big book series, and she's really into it. She told me one night she stayed up with her cousins, and they took turns reading one of the books. I'm like, that's amazing. I guess I still do have connections to books for younger readers, and this one I'm writing in November, I think I will kind of have that audience in mind, but I'm writing it also to be like the kind of thing you'd see on a sci-fi bookstore bookshelf in the 1970s. I'd love to get like a Tor edition, even with like a really cool airbrushed cover, Earth hatching open. Anyway, I have much respect for writing for younger readers, and I think it's it's not a walk in the park. It's there's good and bad stuff, high and low quality anyway. Stuff I do not care for, and other things that I've never been the thing. But yeah, Prydain, Wayside Stories, Mysterious Benedict Society, Stowaway to the Mushroom Planet. This one's a reprint too, but the original ones are all from the 80s, and I think only the first two ever really get reprinted. I could be wrong. Maybe there's a box set. I don't think I am. I wanted to surprise young readers in your life with a weird old series that nobody else is reading today. This might be one. This is a pretty delightful book. People like it. All right, everybody. This has been some further books from the bookcase for young readers in the hallway. We've been looking at various series, and I guess I'll put those all in just one video in the next one. I don't know. I feel like I could talk about all of those at length. We'll see. Whatever I feel like, I guess. Need to focus. Maybe I'll just title this video something about series for young readers. And then I'll continue it looking at these here. Well, we'll see. Well, everybody, I'm in between jobs at the moment, writing articles that I'm not, who knows when I'm going to get paid for them. So if you ever want to help out the channel, keep these cats fed and housed, hit up the old PayPal. Got used once. It was pretty cool. Much gratitude to you. I still remember you and think of you fondly. The person that did that sent an encouraging message. That was really nice. At Michael Farrell Smith on PayPal. I hate to do that, but I've been putting the starving artist lately a little bit. Gotta figure out my life. This is my Cornelian mock-up for a book cover, but it also just keeps me thinking about my book and working on it. I'm gonna add a bunch more things to it, and it's all significant what's on there, and then I'll photograph it out in nature, and it'll be a wraparound cover, obviously with the spine there, and those tags won't be on there. I'm gonna work something better out for all that. I get some super glue because I have some things to glue on there that won't stay on without it. And here's where I'll have the words for the back of the book, and I decided it's gonna be real brief. I got it in mind. Just gonna say A Life in Writing. Shadows of Clouds on the Mountains, book 1 of 2. This is my memoir I've been working on for 15 years. 60 chapter, 2-volume maximalist work. I mean, this is just an image representing it. And the collage shows that I'm willing to ruthlessly tear up portraits of myself to make this portrait. Books for younger readers. What are your thoughts? Share them in the comments. You know, we were all children once. I certainly wasn't. Miss Trunchbull said it in Matilda. I love that part. Miss Honey's all, you must have been Miss Trunchbull. Well, not for long, anyway. It's a classic book, and Miss Trunchbull is a classic villain. Disney will redeem her someday with a Cruella-type movie. Books, you know? Alright. Well, everybody. You like there's a new water dish? No, that's not what that is. Okay, now all 3 cats have drank my water while I've been sitting here. Sweet Pea, you have a flowing fountain that costs electricity to run. I can't respect your... I have nothing of my own. Cat, you don't even live here. You're my daughter's cat. That's Willow. Yeah, well, life is good in many ways. Books we grow up with kind of matter, you know? They shape us. TV shows and movies too, you know? Books can be real special because it's like a one-on-one thing. Like a pop song on headphones in your room, you know? And should Tabby Towers be taught at Harvard? Yes, in a class about children's books. Alright, I'm tired. I want to go lie down. Take care, everybody.